Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, I'm David Kramer here with your Alaska Weather. As always, visit our website, arh.noaa.gov, getting updates to our forecast there. You can call our weather info line, 1-800-472-0391, getting updates there as well. And you can follow us on both Twitter and on Facebook. Starting off, we'll take a quick look at the watches and warnings that we have out for the area. Starting in the Panhandle area, we have winter storm watches out anywhere from the Yakutat area down through central parts of the Panhandle. And those are primarily out from late Wednesday night through Thursday afternoon. But again, check the website for additional details if you're in any of those areas. As we move further to the west, we have blizzard watches out from the Bristol Bay area through all parts of the Kenai Peninsula and then out near Cordova. Those blizzard watches are in effect from Wednesday evening through late Wednesday night. Again, check the website for additional details. And then as we move up into the interior part of the state, we do have some advisories out. Those are winter weather advisories, and they are active right now until 3 p.m. on Wednesdays. Those include areas near Ambler, down to Galena, and out towards Bettles as well. So keep updated on any of those. If you live in any of those areas, a lot of activity going on with this next couple of days with the systems that we have moving through. We'll start off with a look at our satellite imagery. We have our previous low pressure system hanging out to the west, starting to diminish now, but we have a new one coming up from the North Pacific, bringing in a lot of warmer air with it. Can start to see some of the cloud cover making it to the Aleutian Islands. We can watch this loop one more time and watch the low starting to form there, getting some circulation, bringing up that warmer air with it. A lot of rain and snow out ahead of that. Starting to be more rain as it comes in with the southerly flow, warmer air there. And you can see a lot of lower clouds underneath some higher pressure out over the Bering Sea, some stratus associated with that. Take a look now over mainland Alaska satellite imagery. We have some lower clouds over the Gulf right now as well, moving off to the south and east, clearing out a lot of the southeast part of the state, but still a few areas of cloud cover lingering through there. And as we watch this loop one more time out over mainland Alaska, it's kind of hard to see, but we have some cloud cover moving in from the west that's stretching anywhere from the southwest of the state out into the interior. And as we continue on to the remainder of today's forecast, we can see that there's quite a bit of snow associated with that. There is a low near the Seward Peninsula that's bringing a lot of that along the coastline. Some isolated snow showers underneath the higher pressure with some of the stratus underneath that, and then some of that snow making it out into central parts of the interior and along the Arctic coast as well. But down in the south central, we're not seeing a whole lot in terms of precipitation due to that high pressure and just some isolated areas of snow showers down in the southeast. But the big story again is the low pressure coming up from the south, bringing in a lot of warmer air, a lot of precipitation with that as well. A rain and snow mix starting to make its way towards the central Aleutian Islands. Areas of fog mixed in with that. And then out ahead of that, a lot of lower clouds out over the Bering Sea. As we move into the tonight forecast, we can start to see this low moving up towards the north and east, pushing that rain-snow mix out over the Alaska Peninsula and areas of the Bering Sea now. Still some fog with that, but coming in behind it, starting to transition over to rain with the central and western Aleutian Islands becoming a rain mixed with fog there due to that southerly flow coming up. Out over the southwest, not making it there quite yet over the tonight period, not expecting any snow there, but as we get to northern parts of the YK Delta, some blowing snow conditions expected with some of the stronger winds. As we move up along the coastline, this low pressure bringing in snow into places of the interior as well. Out west, we're seeing that mixed in with fog, a little bit more purely snow as we get further off to the east, then snow along the Arctic coast as well. Down in the south central, we are expecting some areas of fog to develop overnight underneath that higher pressure and clearer skies. And as we get to the southeast, not a whole lot of snow expected, but we are expecting to see some blowing snow near the Haines area due to some stronger winds there, picking up some of that snow that's fallen over the last couple days. Taking us into Wednesday, some isolated areas of snow showers developing in places around the Panhandle, and we are going to see that fog still lingering around in much of the south central, with widespread snow stretching out through much of the interior up along the Arctic coast as well, with some areas of blowing snow lingering around the St. Lawrence Island area. But the big story is the low coming up from the south, a new low developing in the eastern Bering Sea, bringing up that warmer air. Rain now stretching into the eastern Aleutian Islands. Rain-snow mix throughout the Bering Sea, extending now towards Kodiak Island. Stronger winds with that as well, and more snow in the Bristol Bay, YK Delta areas, and stronger winds with that. The blizzard watch again in effect for the Bristol Bay area. Keep an eye on that as conditions continue to move along throughout the day on Wednesday. Then as we look for Thursday, a new low coming up from the south, bringing in more rain with more warm weather and some fog mixed in with that, stretching from the western Aleutian Islands all the way towards the Alaska Peninsula, but then starting to mix in with some snow, a little bit colder as we get further to the north. The old low starting to break down now, but still enough to bring snow anywhere from the YK Delta area up towards the Seward Peninsula and then out over much of the interior. The other part of that low, where the triple point low developed, bringing in a lot of precipitation now to the Panhandle area. Snow predominantly up to the north, mixing with rain, a little bit warmer as we get to southern places in the Panhandle. Taking a look at our temperatures for the Panhandle now, a pretty wide variation, 14 degrees up near Haines, all the way up to 37 degrees this afternoon for Ketchikan, one of the highs for the state. As we move to the south central part, in the interior locations, we are seeing temperatures still below zero this afternoon, but along the coastline, primarily in the teens. Cordova a little bit colder, 3 degrees there. Kodiak a little bit warmer, 29 degrees there. Moving up into the interior part of the state, all below zero, with the coldest in the state this afternoon at Eagle, minus 38 degrees. Pretty cold at Arctic Village as well, minus 31 there. Up along the north slope, a little bit warmer actually, still below zero predominantly, but Barter Island out to the east up to 3 degrees this afternoon. And down along the west coast of the state, so get into the Seward Peninsula area, getting up into the teens this afternoon, warmer as we get further south and to the east. And as we drop down into the southwest part of the state, we are seeing temperatures in the 20s this afternoon, colder as we get further inland. Bethel 18 degrees, 14 at Antioch. Warmer again along the coast, Kipnik 25 degrees this afternoon. Down in the Bristol Bay area, single digits further inland, Iliamna 5 degrees, King Salmon 3 degrees. But as we get further out towards the water, getting into the teens. And down in the Alaska Peninsula, we are seeing temperatures in the 20s, warmer at Sandpoint 30 degrees there. And then again, the highs for the state, 37 degrees. Atka and Adak both seeing that higher temperature. Shemya not so far off, 36 degrees there. A little bit colder at St. Paul, 28 degrees this afternoon. Then our lows for tonight, staying in the Aleutian Islands area, only dropping down around those mid to upper 30s, not very much change from what they're seeing this afternoon. Then along the west coast of the state, single digits around the Bristol Bay area, down into the teens for the YK Delta. Colder along the Arctic coast, getting down below zero, right around that minus 10 mark. As we get into the interior, staying in the minus 20 range. Colder down at Northway, minus 31 degrees expected low there. Down in the south central, staying below zero in the interior locations, in the single digits along the Gulf Coast. And then down in the southeast part of the state, quite a wide variation, down in the single digits up north, around 30 as we get further to the south. And as we look at our highs for tomorrow, getting up into the mid 30s in the south, only getting up into the teens as we get further to the north. In the south central area, getting up into the single digits for most locations, not quite as high, minus 13 expected high for the Glen Allen area. Then in the interior, right around the zero mark in the southern parts, only getting up to the minus 10 range as we get further to the north. Arctic Village only getting up to minus 23 degrees. And up along the Arctic coast, in the still below zero, right around mid-range there, minus 6 for many locations. Down in the Seward Peninsula, getting up into the teens. Similarly, in the YK Delta, up into the teens. Warmer at Macoriac, 21 degrees expected high there. Into the 20s, around 30 as we get into the Bristol Bay area. And then in the 40s all the way along the Aleutian Islands. Colder out to the west for the highs tomorrow. Taking a look at our aviation forecast, widespread MVFR and IFR conditions with that system coming up from the south, with a low moving in from the west. IFR conditions expected as well up to the Seward Peninsula area. And then along the Arctic coast, we are going to see some MVFR and occasional IFR conditions there as well. And in the Gulf, we're going to have those MVFR conditions extending in out ahead of that system moving in tomorrow. Our passes and Aktuvik MVFR tomorrow. Adigan Pass should also be MVFR throughout the day. Lake Clark and Merrill will both start VFR but then drop down to IFR. Rainy Pass will be VFR dropping down to IFR. Windy Pass should be VFR throughout the day tomorrow. Isabel Pass should be VFR for tomorrow. Mentasta should also remain VFR throughout the day. Tanita Pass will be VFR dropping down to MVFR, as well as Portage starting off VFR, dropping down to MVFR. And then Chilkoot and White will both start off VFR and drop down to MVFR later in the day. Taking a look at our freezing level, kind of hugging the Gulf Coast, moving out over the Alaska Peninsula, and then shooting off into the Bering Sea, north of the Pribilofs, and then out to the west. We have this warmer air moving in from the south with that system, expecting that to kind of push up to the north and east as that low moves in further to the area. As we take a look now at our icing chart, we have above 9,000 feet over much of the eastern Bering Sea, extending out towards Kodiak Island. Up over the northern parts of the interior, between 3,000 and 8,000 feet, some light icing expected there as well. Nothing over the southeast. With the main part of our jet, we have a 120 knot jet coming out of the northwest over the central part of mainland Alaska. A 90 knot branch of that coming out of the west, extending out into Canada. The main part of the jet, though, 175 knots, moving in from the southwest behind that system, coming up towards the Aleutian Islands, and then turning off out over the Gulf at 145 knots. Dropping us down to 9,000 feet. Flow over the northern part of the state out of the west, 15 to 30 knots, getting stronger as we get closer to the Brooks Range. Out of a southwesterly direction, 30 knots over much of the remainder of mainland Alaska, and then out of a west-northwest direction out over the southeast, 30 to 35 knots there. Pretty strong flow around our low, though, 45 to 50 knots out of a southerly direction, becoming more northeasterly as we get into the Bering and out over the western Aleutian Islands. Down to 3,000 feet, we have flow as high as 65 knots out of an easterly direction over the Bering around this low pressure system, dropping down to 50 knots as we get into northern parts of the Bering Sea, and out of a southwesterly direction, 50 to 55 knots over the eastern Aleutian Islands, extending over to the Bristol Bay area. Out over mainland Alaska, westerly flow, 20 knots, getting up to as high as 25 further to the south, and that flow switching to become more southerly. Stronger winds coming in towards Kodiak Island, dropping down to that 25 knots pretty quickly, and then a southerly flow moving in over the southeast around 30 knots there. Taking a quick look at our turbulence out over the interior below 5,000 feet with some of those stronger winds, but the biggest impact is going to be out over the southwest, including areas of the Kenai Peninsula down to Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula below 7,000 feet there. Some more moderate turbulence expected, and then way out to the west below 4,000 feet over the western Aleutian Islands. If you stay with us, we'll be back shortly with the marine forecast.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Jim Peranto. Alaska's great outdoors can be a wonderful place to experience. From its mountains and forests to its rivers and seas, Alaska is a playground for the outdoor enthusiast. Yet each year more and more outdoor injuries and deaths occur. To help reduce the alarming rise in outdoor injuries and deaths, an organization called the North America Outdoor Institute was created. Today I have the pleasure of talking with Deborah McGann, who is the Executive Director of the Institute, and she will tell us more about this important safety-minded organization. Welcome to the studio, Deborah.
Thank you, James. It's nice to be here.
I met you a couple weeks ago. I just found out about this organization. I think you have a lot to offer the viewers here about what you're doing. So let's start off with what the North America Outdoor Institute is about.
Okay, well, we're about training the public, the general public, on just practical information that people need in order to recreate in Alaska safely, because a lot of times you can't rewind a mistake, and it does have tragic consequences, and we've lost a lot of people that we love and care about. And so we wanted to make this fun, engaging, interactive, but really to help change the culture so that as kids are growing up and going through school, they're just exposed to this information early on.
How did you get started?
Well, I personally got started because I had a tragedy in my own life many years ago when my children were young. And when my children were in their teenage years, they were into the skiing and the snowboarding, and we actually lived in Valdez at the time, and we knew I had never had avalanche education. So my 16-year-old son with a snowboard, I wanted him educated and couldn't really find a program that was appropriate. I could find 3-day programs, but you know, he's 16, he wouldn't sit through that. So my background was education, and I had been a cheerleading coach, and I knew you had to engage these kids to get them to listen. You can't stand up there and lecture and say, we're going to talk safety,
Right.
because they just don't care. But so we made this very interactive, and Dean Cummings is really the force behind this. He's a professional mountain guide, and he's great with the kids, and so we developed this more like a Hollywood show, where it's very engaging and interactive, and the kids get to actually learn and hold the equipment in their hand and learn slope angle and snowpack and the things that help, just practical, easy things that they can incorporate it in the way they recreate that'll keep them alive when they're out there and they can have fun.
And it's a fairly new organization, right? 2004 is when you
That's
started
correct.
this?
That's right. We were born in 2004, and of course the first year we just brainstormed and decided how to do this. So we've actually been teaching programs since about 2005. But the State of Alaska Division of Parks, the Snow Track Committee, has supported us and helped us develop these programs. And now we do a variety of things, from avalanche to ATV safety to bicycle safety, and we talk a lot about the wildlife and water safety, and so we've tried to incorporate a lot of different outdoor activities that all really have one thing in common. You have to have a plan. You need to really pay attention to the weather, and we've really connected the weather. So it's great. This is a nice place to be, because we recognize that the weather is the most important thing. That's the ingredients that make these lasagnas of dangerous snowpack. So
Well said.
So yeah, so we want people to be educated about the weather and really pay attention to it.
Talk a little bit about Be Snow Smart and Be Summer Smart. This is something that you guys are doing, right?
It is. Be Snow Smart is a program that we take to the schools and to different communities, and it's kind of, we keep it short so that it's an awareness program. We're trying to turn the switch on that says, oh, there's some simple things I need to incorporate into my protocol when I'm going to go out and play, so that I can do it, I can recreate at a higher level, safer. And so we try to get people educated. The main thing we do with Be Snow Smart is to let people know, the more you learn, the more important it is for you to learn more, because you just can never know too much. And we don't want people to get a little bit of education and think, oh, I can go scale McKinley, when the truth is they've only been exposed to stay out of a terrain trap and learning to recognize what is a terrain trap. So Be Snow Smart is our introductory level that just introduces people to the importance of getting awareness training.
And it's a whole range of people that you're educating here, not just the kids, but it's outdoor enthusiasts, adults. It's a
That's
whole
right.
range, right?
It is. It's the whole range. And we like the schools because we want the kids to grow up with the culture of being aware and safety-minded, but we recognize that our key demographic of people getting caught tend to be those between 16 and 30. But yet, I was personally born and raised here. I've been here 55 years. I didn't learn this in school, and so I need to know this. And I was in my 40s as I'm learning this, and I recognize I have a lot of friends that are out there doing crazy things. And last spring, we lost somebody we know on a snow machine accident that was caught in an avalanche, and there were 10 people in the group, and it's my understanding not one of them had a beacon, a shovel, or a probe. And
Wow, that's amazing.
It is amazing, and it never ceases to amaze me. And really, in hindsight, they're all regretting that and wish they would have known that, but they hadn't taken the time to get this information. So we want to give you, in a timely, entertaining way, give you some of this basic information so that you don't have to invest a ton of time and money, but yet you can get the information.
How can people help your institute?
Well, we need volunteers is one thing. We do these big community fairs. We did one last weekend at the Lusac Library, and volunteers is the one thing we were short of. So, we'd love to have people get involved by volunteering. We are public supported. We're not part of a line item in somebody's budget. And so it's a very grassroots effort. We've donated a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a very small group. And so, yeah, we're looking for people that would be interested in board positions, interested in financial support, sponsor support. We've recognized that one thing people really enjoy is getting an incentive to get an education. So if they're rewarded after they get this education, we got helmets one year through a snow track grant. Our attendance went up 200% because you could go through the program and at the end you would get a Snell DOT helmet for $25. And people were like, that is a great incentive. And people were walking away with the helmets but saying, the helmet is great, but the education we gained was valuable beyond words. And so we recognize that's a great, if they want to donate helmets.
Or whatever. Right?
Exactly.
What plans for the future do you have for your institute? Anything coming up in the future?
We have a lot of plans. Mainly we're trying to get more incorporated with the schools so that it's part of your math curriculum that you're studying, avalanche, slope angles. It's part of your science that you're looking at snow crystals and snowpack. It's part of your health because you're getting out there and you're being active and engaged. It's part of your physical activity. It's, we want English, there's a lot of grammar that goes with this and vocabulary that if you knew what is a terrain trap or, those triggers, those kinds of things, it would make you more aware as you go out to recreate.
How can people learn more about your institute?
They can learn more at our website, and we're at naoiak.org or besnowsmart.org. And they're welcome to call us at 376-2898.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We'll have you again back in the studio at some point, I'm sure.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. And thank you for joining us here on Alaska Weather Facts. Until next time.
Welcome back to the marine forecast. Starting off in the southeast part of the state. Pretty weak flow for much of the area on Wednesday. Highest is up near the Skagway area out of the north, 25 knots there, and some freezing spray expected with that. Seas only up to as high as 8 feet out in the eastern parts of the Gulf. But when we move into Thursday, winds really picking up, becoming more southerly, up to as high as 40 knots out all throughout the Gulf, 40 knots there. Still out of the north up in the northern part of the inside waters, 25 knots there with some stronger gusts in the Petersburg area. Seas now up to as high as 13 feet as we get further off to the north in the Gulf. Over in the south central, primary flow from the Cook Inlet area out of a northeasterly direction, getting stronger as we get further to the south, up to as high as 45 knots. A lot of freezing spray expected in the ice-free areas. A little bit weaker out in the Gulf, 25 knots out of a southeasterly direction, becoming stronger up to as high as 40 knots as we get closer to Kodiak Island. And in Prince William Sound out of a northeasterly direction, 20 knots there with some freezing spray. Moving us into Thursday, flow up in the North Stain out of a northeasterly direction, 30 knots, 45 knots, especially with the barrier jet along the coast there near Cordova out of an easterly direction, up to as high as 15 feet for seas, and then down to 20 knots as we get closer to the Barren Islands out of a southerly direction. However, still in Cook Inlet area, primarily out of a northeasterly direction, getting up to as high as 35 knots, dropping down and changing direction in Shelikof Strait, 15 knots there out of the southeast. Then in the Alaska Peninsula, primary flow out of a southeasterly direction, 40 knots, becoming more easterly as we get into the Bering Sea with some freezing spray up in the Bristol Bay area. Seas stronger on the Pacific side up to as high as 17 feet on Wednesday. And then into Thursday, flow becoming more southwesterly, dropping down to around 20 knots with 15 feet for the highest seas there. Only around 15 to 20 knots on the Bering side. Out in the Aleutian Islands, starting out in the east, flow out of a southerly direction, becoming more southeasterly up to as high as 40 knots there, a little bit weaker for many of the areas on the Pacific side. And as we move out over the western part of the Aleutian Islands out of a northeasterly direction up to as high as 50 knots there, seas up to as high as 25 feet. Then as we move into Thursday, flow remaining out of a northeasterly direction, 40 to 45 knots way out west. Then as we move back over to the east, flow only around 20 knots out of a south or southeasterly direction, weaker as we get to the Bering side. Once again, the strongest winds on Thursday are going to be out to the west. As we move over the west coast of the state, out of an easterly direction up to as high as 45 knots as we get closer down towards Bristol Bay. Freezing spray expected there, as well as up through the north out of a northerly direction near the Bering Strait, 25 knots there, and then out of an easterly direction, 45 knots near the Pribilofs. As we look into Thursday, flow becoming more northerly, 25 to 30 knots, with seas getting up to as high as 14 knots near St. Matthew Island. As we look up along the Arctic coast, westerly flow 15 knots all along the Arctic coast. Then on the western coast out of the north, 15 to 20 knots there, all areas under ice now. And looking into Thursday, flow still pretty northerly, strongest down further to the south, 25 knots there. Through the week flow around 5 knots as we look along much of the Arctic coast. Quick recap over the state. Low pressure bringing in snow through much of the interior, extending up to the Arctic coast with areas of fog mixed in, especially out to the west. Fog also in the south central. Not much going on in the southeast for tonight, but we do have a low out over the Aleutian Islands bringing a rain and snow mix with some areas of fog in there. Warmer air bringing in rain behind that and rain further out to the west. And as we look into tomorrow, we do have that low moving up further into the eastern Bering Sea, pushing that rain line up further to the north and east. Rain still expected way out west, but snow finally making its way into areas around Bristol Bay and the YK Delta. Snow continuing through much of the west coast, along the Arctic coast and into the interior. And some areas of fog expected in the south central, especially in the morning hours. Snow finally making its way to southern parts of the Kenai Peninsula. Some isolated areas of snow showers out over the southeast. Then into Thursday, going to see that snow spread a little bit more, especially up north. A lot of snow there, mixing with rain further to the south. Snow throughout the south central and southern parts of the interior, extending to the west coast of the state, mixing with rain in the Bristol Bay area. And with Alaska Weather, I'm David Kramer. Thanks for being with us tonight.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.